All right. Let this get going. Let's see. Make sure this is all happening the way that it should. Give everybody a minute to get in. There we go. Hello, everyone. Good to see you. I'm only 1 minute late. 1 minute late. And I just was getting ready. It's early. It looks dark out. It's just raining. But it is early. It's only 8 a.m. for me. Very early. Good morning, everybody. Good morning. I'm going to wait for a few more people to filter in, and then I've got a new intro video to play. If you've watched a lot of my recent videos, you know that we've been having issues with for some reason, it not playing correctly. And I don't really know why it's not playing correctly. But somebody made something very nice for us, and yeah, and I think you're gonna like it. So I'll give it a minute for more people to filter in, and then we'll put it up there. In the meantime, just let me get a few things ready here to get back into this. I hope everybody is having a good time. I hope everybody is doing well. I'm Mountain Time. I am Mountain Time. It'll be, you'll see. It's gonna be great. It's gonna be great. Especially if you've been here for the last ones and seen it mess up over and over, and for whatever reason, I don't know why it's been doing that, but it's gonna be great. All right, let's do the intro. For today's video, we're going to be revisiting that transfer chart that we went over before. We're gonna be talking about that. Kind of re-looking at some of the names that are coming up, some of the things that have happened, some of the things that that need to get done this window, some of the names that have changed, some of the new names that have been added, all of that. So it's going to be a lot of fun. That's what we're going to discuss. We're going to try to keep it interesting, and I'm happy to answer a lot of questions, but I'll try to keep myself slightly under control compared to last time. Well, compared to in general, whenever I do these live videos, I have a hard time keeping up with myself. So let's get right into it. Here we go. All right, there you go. There was the new intro. We had to thank you to Jevin for that. That was I think that was pretty good. Sorry that if it was very loud, I haven't controlled the volume on it. But yeah, thank you for Jevin there. Yeah, and don't worry about it. I can always if there's a claim on it, there's a claim on it. I think we'll be okay. I think it's fair use in terms of there's a word for it, satire. I think there's fair use on satire on those types of things, but I wouldn't worry about it too much. If Universal Pictures decides they're watching my videos, then so be it, you know. Anyway, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. We'll be fine. Trust me. It is not a big deal. All right. So, yeah, we'll be all right. Don't worry about it. All right, cool. So anyway, I hope everybody enjoyed that because I was it's been hilarious, and Jevin has made that. He's been around in our what do you call it, in our community for a long time, and I thought it was pretty funny. So getting to the chart, I have a whole bunch of notes. This is where we left it last time, I believe. This is where I left it last time, and I wanted to pick it up again because a lot of updates, a lot of things. I said I want to revisit this a few times over, over the course of leading up to summer and then into summer, and make sure that we have a good, kind of feel for things and where they're at. There's a lot of names that we're probably going to want to erase, probably that we're going to want to add, that we're going to want to change, all of that. One of the things that I want to discuss is, that there's obviously a focus on, I think one of the things to really look at that we've talked before and that we want to look at is that, I would say there's a big focus on younger players. That is definitely happening. The Ineos view, of course, on this kind of rebuild that we want to look at is that it should be, younger signings. It should be players who are, who have a long time for the future. They don't want to look at, we're going to just get people who will last a year and then they're out the door and they're on huge wages. They've obviously highlighted, a number of people for bad signings in the past, things that have made a mistake, players like Casemiro and all of that, where it's just been expensive. And you look at the fall off with players like Casemiro now, where you pay a lot of money and you don't end up with a long period of time. So in terms of an estimated budget, obviously this could change right now. But without, Champions League football, which you're not going to get, obviously, the results yesterday, great, with Arsenal, City going out, couldn't be happier in that respect. Obviously, fifth is very unlikely to get Champions League in England now, not that we were going to get it anyway. It's more of a miss for someone like Aston Villa if they end up missing out, right, by getting fifth. But without that, we're not going to be seeing, 250 million net spend, this season. We're not going to be seeing that. That's just not going to be happening. But from what I've been told, it's not that different to usual, but there's a lot of potential sales. And when I say something like 125 million of a net spend, it's not, you have to think in a few different ways too, as you're talking about what kind of players can be lifted and sold and what kind of players can come off in terms of wages, right? Because if someone like Casemiro moves on from United on, 300 to 350K a week or something like that, then, it's significant. Whereas, if someone is sold for, 30 million that's on low wages, it makes a little bit less of a difference, right? But there are a lot of players that will be sold. So let's kind of talk through some of those first, in terms of the players that are very likely going to be leaving. Obviously there's the Mason Greenwood situation where it can provide potentially a plus immediately. And I wouldn't be surprised to even see, potential something like a swap deal there. But that's one. United don't owe any money on him. There's Jadon Sancho, obviously his situation. There's not a lot of profit to be made there, but if his wages and such came off the books, obviously that helps. If he moves on, which is still the most likely outcome at this point in time, is that he moves on, even if there is a change in manager. What were the other things? Obviously, Christian Eriksen, he could go. There's a good chance that he could go. It doesn't save too much, but he could go. At the same time, we don't owe anything on him. If he goes for near free, which would probably be what it is, and get the wages off, that just helps there, about 10 million a year. Then at the back, Harry Maguire, Rafael Varane will likely leave. Casemiro's a big one. And and then at this point in time, I think that Varane and Maguire are the two center backs most likely to leave, with Lindelof very likely to stay and see out his final year. At this point in time, that's what's likely. So, you'd be looking at Lisandro Martinez, Lindelof, Kambuala, and really you need two signings there. You need two more signings at center back. Very likely, if that is the case and both of those leave. But that's a lot of signings. That's a lot of sales potential. A lot of players out. Lindelof has a year left. They extended his deal, and it's less likely it is to be sold. Scott McTominay could, but he's not on the top of the list of being moved on. It would be Casemiro and Eriksen. So yeah, there's a lot of things that can happen there. Lindelof in that stage would be mostly like the an emergency kind of option, well into the rotation, but has a year left. There's not going to be much value on there. And obviously Martial's already leaving too. There's a lot of savings to be had this summer, okay? But let's start at the front, and let's talk about strikers. I got to add a name here, right, which I've been kind of talking about recently as another forward, which is a Thales from Brazil. That would be the main name that I would add up top here. I don't have a more likely striker. So, if we look at this overall setup, and the reason, again, guys, the reason Lindelof instead of Maguire is which one's worth more money? Which one is able to raise more for the club if we're trying to rebuild things? Harry Maguire being fourth choice and not getting any money for him makes less sense. It just does. It makes less sense than Lindelof at fourth choice and being able to sign two center backs. It just does. It just makes more sense. I don't love it, but it just makes more sense. But yeah, in terms of forwards, these are kind of the list of names that we've been looking at. That we talked about last time. I don't know, what I don't know that there's necessarily a very likely one right now. I would personally keep Šeško up higher up as I had him last time. Remember, green, yellow, red, higher up, more likely. But I would definitely say that Šeško or Thales, if United get a move on things, are potential signings. If Erik ten Hag is still manager this summer, then I think Brian Brobby moves up to being a real possibility. Evan Ferguson, I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I haven't heard anything much more on Evan Ferguson. I don't think Ivan Toney is a real option for this summer. I think he's I think he's someone of interest, but I don't think he's a real option because he's going to be very expensive. There are concerns about things like attitude, all of that following everything that's happened. So I'm going to keep him in red because I really don't see that happening. A very expensive, a very expensive player like that. So that's not one that, that I think we're going to be very likely to see. I do think that, right now, probably Šeško is the most likely player per the information that I have. And remember, the goal of this video and what I'm talking about here is going over names that, going over names as far as my information goes. I don't, at the moment, think Evan Ferguson is a real target for this summer right now. But yeah, I think Šeško is. I think Thales is, and we'll see. We will see. And when you say, if why would Brian Brobby move up the list if Erik ten Hag is here? If it's different in terms of how they're running transfers, it is. But if Erik ten Hag is still here, without his contract extended, then that means he still has the same contractual rights on transfers as he had before, which is why it would always surprise me if that would be what would happen. And which means he would still have the ability to influence quite a bit. Yeah, Jonathan David, I think, is fairly unlikely as well. But I'm going to leave him there just because there are names that we've looked at. Let me see if I'm missing anybody major from that area. So yeah, this is definitely an area of question, this whole striker area, where I'm really, really not sure. Let's talk about right wing. From my information, this has not changed much. I still see and hear that Olise is a potential if we move for a signing in this area, then Michael Olise will probably be our top choice for it. And there's a decent chance that can happen if they push for it. He's got a good release clause, he's the right age and profile and all of that. So if they move in that position, then I think it'll be Olise. I have not heard really any changes there in terms of names and people and all of that. It's not advanced. It's not advanced, but it is happening. If they go for this position, he would be the most likely player to sign there. And I think that there is a good chance, that he gets signed this summer over players like, Nico Williams and Nusa and all of that. I probably move Nusa down as well. There's other clubs interested, other clubs looking. Neto had, another injury, right? Obviously on Olise, one of the questions was, could he stay healthy? He's come back now. I think he's made a sub appearance, made a start 67 minutes, 70 minutes at the weekend in Liverpool's loss and Palace's win over Liverpool. So that is a good one there. Let's go to right back. I can move Frimpong up to about here, but I honestly don't think we're going to sign him. That would really, I think, be pending on something like, if there's a change of manager and they move to something like a back three, then sure, maybe it becomes more possible. But at the moment, at right back, I think the most likely scenario is Wan-Bissaka sees out his final season at minimum, and see how he performs, of course, but sees out his extra year, and Dallo. And that's what we have at right back for this coming summer. That is the most likely thing. There's potential that that Wan-Bissaka could leave, but that would require United to then need a good offer that allows them to buy there, where they don't have necessarily a clear-cut, top target at the moment. I don't think it's a priority for this summer. And questions about Garassi, Gyökeres at striker, just to make that clear. As far as I've heard, not really a target for United, either of those at the moment. Devin Wrench, I'm leaving there. Again, in a similar way. Not likely, but in a similar way, because, if Ten Hag wanted to sign him, then he would at least ask them to be looking at him, which they have, and then they could decide if he's a viable player or not. I don't know. If it's still done, even with less, even if it's less influential and Ten Hag is here, it doesn't mean he can't be saying, hey, what about this player? And they can look at him. And what if the scouts decide that player is good enough? And what if the analytics decide that player is good enough? And what if, the recruitment team decide that player is good enough? It just does make it more likely, if he's here, for names that he knows to be at least suggested to and looked at by the recruitment team. Does that make sense? So either way, those names make sense to be there. Maybe Dumfries is a little higher up, player I've looked at before, but right now I'm just not sure that this position is going to be one of priority right now. Center back, obviously, we have kind of combinations between the two areas. I'm going to move Silva down, Todibo down, and move Bremer into the yellow, because there's been a bit of news about Bremer. I'm still a little bit unsure. I think that Silva's, unless he's not very expensive, unless he is not the price, that 100 million that was priced earlier, I think it's very unrealistic. If he is, then where's Tosin? We'll talk about Tosin. He's one I'm going to add to this list now, as I've gotten more on him since the last time we did this, where I didn't have anything. I don't think that it's not to say that I there's a lot of questions over really a lot of these center backs right now. The name I wanted to add, Inacio's on the left center back. Hold on one second. The name I did want to add is, hold on. I'm just looking something up really quick. I know the name. I've talked about him a few times, but I did want to add a name here. I should be more prepared. Hold on a second. Yeah, okay. I wanted to add, of course, this is a name that we should be adding because I've spoken about him recently. And this is in line with, some of the looking at South America, right? This is a player. This is a player that United have been looking at. I'm running out of room in my yellow here. So he's in there, but Anselmino, the young Argentine for Boca Juniors, they're looking at young players. They're looking in South America. They've been doing more scouting and more work and more, looking at it there. And so, of course, it depends if, of course, they actually move forward with it. We've been saying that for a long time. But there has been more focus in South America in recent months. And, through the course of the season. So I would hope to see them actually, move forward with things a little bit more, in that position. It would be nice if we have. It would be nice if they would kind of do that. And, at the moment, I don't think that they have, done anything. They really need these people in order to get that done. They really do need it. Obviously, Brighton had a lot of scouting in. Brighton had a lot of scouting in South America. Brighton did a lot of work in South America. So, something obviously that I think Ashworth would be interested in doing. It's something that I think, obviously, Omar Barada. There'll be a new focus with the people who are coming in on doing that a little bit more, on focusing a little bit more on these kind of players and trying to get some of those options, coming in this season. So, Anselmino could definitely be an interesting one that United could look at and that they have looked at and that they will see if they like him. But, in the meantime, I would say, yeah, I don't know who's more likely. I probably would put Silva a little bit low on this list because of the kind of the quoted prices, things like that. I can't say that I know of a clear-cut one here. I don't know of a clear-cut favorite at right center back, but there's a lot of different ones. This may end up being a situation where they present and say, look, these are kind of our options. I think they would prefer to buy young, and that's why I'm still unsure about Bremer. There's been a lot of talk of him, but yeah, given his age and costs, I'm not sure that he's the right profile for what they're looking at. So I'm still unsure about that one. Just there's been a lot of talk, so I wanted to move him up a little bit, but I kind of feel like the other younger players are going to be more likely. Look, 27 is not old. I get it. 27 is not old, but it's not young. It's not young. In Toribo, he's an interesting player, but I'm just not sure about it. I'm not sure what he wants. There's been some questions about that. He may be trying to move back to Barcelona or somewhere like that. So yeah, let's add in Tosin here, right? Is he a right or a left center back? Now I'm questioning that. Now I am questioning that for some reason. Which one it is? Yeah, he's a right center back. So we'll put him in here. Obviously, this list is full. This list is full. Let's put him in there. There's interest. I would not say that United are favorites. There is interest from United in Tosin. I would not say United are favorites for him. There are a lot of other players, a lot of other teams interested, West Ham, all of that, right? That I think have even already made contact per, some of the things that they've posted or that their people have posted. So, yeah, I am unsure. There of that one and how likely it is. So we'll see, but yeah, that's kind of the names. There's a lot up in the air when it comes to center backs. Obviously, you're going to want to. We need some movement to happen, and in order to get them in. But these are the names that I would look at here. right, find the next Mbappe rather than sign Mbappe. And so I think that is the case. And then on Diamande, I've not heard anything with regards to United. There's other clubs interested. Let's move on to the midfield. These are the names, all the names that I had before. I would kind of leave it like this. I'm just going to move Neves over here for a second. I'm going to keep Fofana in here. I'm going to move Palacios down because I believe that there's no way Leverkusen are selling him this summer. Hackney, Neves. It's going to start getting busy in here. I'm probably just going to have to start deleting some names at this point in time. I don't feel like Zubamendi is realistic. Let's talk about Gray, but Gray is going to go into the red. Archie Gray. Archie Gray is someone that's been of interest for a long time, but it's pretty well expected that they're not going to be able to obtain him, unfortunately. Yao Neves is somebody really of a lot of interest. Oh, there was Gomez, right? That was linked here that I should at least add in. I still haven't heard much on him, so I don't know that I have him very highly, somewhere in between red and yellow. And then as well, like this list is getting full here. And I'll say what I want to say about this in a minute. Dewsbury Hall. I'll say what I want to say in a minute, and then I'll move some more people around it. It's looking really, really busy on this. Dewsbury Hall, yeah. So on the midfield, as far as I can tell, there's a very wide range of profiles that are being looked at. Very, very wide range of profiles that are being looked at. And I can kind of imagine why that is the case. Yeah, Yao Gomez, not Angel Gomez. Why that's the case, because we don't really know how the midfield is going to play. You could have, Eriksen going, Casemiro going. You're obviously going to need, if Casemiro going is almost an extreme requirement to signing, a major defensive midfielder type, right? Yeah, I'm gonna have to make these bigger, aren't I? I'm gonna have to make all these things like a little bit bigger to fit this all in. Hold on one second. Let me see. Just gonna have a pain trying to select it. There you go. Look at that. Make red bigger on this one and shoot it down. And then I'll probably do this all in like a totally different format later. There's a really wide variety of players that are being looked at, at the moment. And I think that a big part of the reason for that is because we don't know what's going to happen yet. We just don't. And, we don't know exactly how we're going to play in the future. We don't know, exactly how it's going to work moving forward. We just don't. We don't have, that kind of... One second here. There's a lot of questions, right? And we have to see who leaves, who goes, who stays, all of that. And if Casemiro goes, then obviously more defensive midfielders there. But then what about a second midfielder in there? You have Bruno, you have Mount. How long do you have Bruno for? Do you want to start buying, a young replacement for Bruno in the future? What do you want to do, moving forward? And that'll come down to the manager too. This is an area where, you do have to settle on a style, but also in terms of how they actually set the team up, where a manager and how they want to set things up does matter to some degree in terms of who you're getting and who you're bringing in. So, someone like, Fofana, right? Good, strong ball winner, I think is a real option. Someone like Neves, how would they partner up with, Kabi Menu? How do they see the midfield? Does somebody see the midfield as, Kabi Menu, Bruno, and Mount? Is that still the midfield that we're looking at in the future? Are they going to look for one more physical? Are they going to look for more of a flat three? There's going to be a lot of differences between, how anyone wants to set this up. So I think there's a really wide range of options here. There's a really wide range of options here. So I think it's really hard to say exactly where they're at. But here's what I'm looking at right now. You have players like, Hackney, who's, I'll try to shift this around a little bit just in terms of like you have your more defensive ones on the right, or your deeper midfielders and your more box to box, or I don't even know how to structure all of this. Anyway, I'm going to move Onana down to orange. But there's a lot of ways, or yellow rather, there's a lot of ways to look at this. And frankly, I can't say that I know. Hjulman is, I think, one where he's affordable potentially. He fits a good profile in terms of a defensive midfielder, in terms of a physical player who's good on the ball and good in possession. And but really, a lot of this could change. A lot of this could change dramatically. Do they think we could just go for one, depending on him, right? Like someone might look at it and say, even if Casemiro goes, Eriksen goes, we need one midfielder because I'm not playing. We need one strong midfielder coming in, and they might say that Onana is that guy. But there's just so many different ways that they can go. And I cannot say I know who the top targets are at this point in time. Neves is really, really, really liked, but he's extremely expensive, and that's a problem. That is a problem, and so it makes it really difficult to figure this out, because they really don't want to be spending 100 million, 80 million on a single player, where they need so much more in the team. So it's going to depend, but Hjulman is a good option. He's really good on the ball and all of that. So these are the options in terms of likelihood. I think that the only one, it is so hard to say at this point in time. But I wouldn't be surprised if we do look at players like Hayden Hackney from Boro, as potential options. How many minutes they'll get, I don't know, but I do think it'd be potential to buy some younger players like that. And, and scouting in the championship, I think there'll be some more options that open up. Moving on to kind of left center back, I still understand that, Gerard Braithwaite is the top target there. He could very much still be the main signing in that position. Obviously, I think since we've done the last one, Lisandro Martinez got himself, injured again. And, it is what it is. There's doubts, there's concerns over his health and his fitness for the future. There's concerns over his fit in different situations. The thing with Gerard Braithwaite that's important, and again, people to understand, Gerard Braithwaite is a, he's a young player. He is not the finished product, but he has a lot of potential, and people judging off of individual games, things like that is a mistake. He's a good player, and he will be a good player in the future. And when you're talking about center backs, a lot of times you're talking about, there was another name to add. When you're talking about center backs, you're talking often about development. When players are young, they are prone to making errors. This was a really good source who said this, so I would keep it as an option. It doesn't 100% fit for me, the young, but because of this, the quality of the source that reported it, I think it's worth adding onto the list. How old is he? 26 years old, so he's not old. So, that is one that I definitely would add on to our list of center backs as well. But yeah, I think a lot of these are still of interest. I think really any of these are still of interest. And it's going to be about costs. They're not going to be wanting to pay 70, 80 million for Braithwaite, right? They want to pay, players who are still developing prices for those kind of players. And I think that 45, 50 million is probably the sweet spot to be getting, these quality young players. When you look at your Olise's, Braithwaite's. And again, I did a video in between the last month talking about the physical aspects of, I didn't say Bremer's old. He's just expensive for the price. But 60, 70 million is a lot for players 27 versus, a younger player. But again, I did a video talking about the physical levels at United needing to be raised and getting players who are physically ready, who are very solid, who are very strong, who are, quality in terms of, their fitness, their athleticism, their ability to deal with the physicality of the league. And also players who are technically good on ball. And when you look at the situations and kind of the names that are forming, I think you could kind of see that a little bit from my perspective, at least, that it makes a lot of sense. You bring in Olise, someone who is Premier League experience. You bring in Holman is very strong physically, on ball, very strong, press resistant, plays in a physical league of Portugal. Obviously, Braithwaite is, Kilman is, Tosun would be. I think that is something to really look at, something of a lot of focus this summer. In the midfield, I would think that that matters. I would think that matters, and I do think that that's a factor in the midfield decisions and all of that as well. And so these are some good names, but I would definitely keep Braithwaite, Kilman in mind. Then we've looked at Inacio as also an option. All of that. So, yeah, I still hear Braithwaite is a main option there and is a serious option there, that there's been good contacts for him, and, that it's still something that is quite likely. And I think that that is something to strongly keep an eye on. Again, the way that I would really focus on his team, and we can talk about some of the theory of it after I finish going through the last name here for a few more minutes. We need a balance. We need a balance of things. We're not in a position to be buying to compete next season, and that's not how Ineos see it. The way that they see it is 3 years. Regularly, Sir Jim has talked about needing patience, and that the goal should be a positive trajectory. And last year, we kind of scammed the position that we finished in, frankly. If you look at a lot of the stats, a lot of the underlines, a lot of what happened, I think we were 7th once again in goal difference at that time, 7th or 8th in goals scored. A lot of the underlying stats, we were low. It's going to take time to build things up properly and to do things right. Get young players who can develop and stay in the future. Get young players that don't need to compete immediately. We don't have Champions League next season. You want low wages, you want all of that. That gives you a lot more flexibility, and you buy more finished products, 1 or 2 years in, once you see where you're at. But it's real important to just understand that. I think that what constitutes success next year, for example, may not be what people think, frankly. I know that it's not going to necessarily be popular to a lot of people. A lot of people are impatient. I know why. It's been a long time. But realize that a lot of the things that are happening now are things that should have happened 10 years ago. And that's not to say it takes 10 years to fix it. It's not to say it's going to take 10 years to fix it. But, even when you're close, you're not that close if you don't do things right. Even when you're close, you're not that close if you don't do things right. When we finished second under Ollie, we weren't close to being contenders regularly for the Premier League, for Champions League, and all of that. We weren't close. We're not buying 2 big name players out from winning titles. We're just not. And the reality has to really sink in for people on that. That is not where we are. That's a great point. No point getting Champions League when we're getting knocked out before it gets serious every time. It doesn't do anything for anybody. It really doesn't. And I think that is where, there's a lot of, people are not, I think that if we build properly, then we can continue to, improve upon these areas. And we can see good football. I think that people are, underrating the importance of a lot of these young players and what they could become, and how they end up developing into, a really good team. I really do think that is important. I think so long we've tried to cheat the rebuild. You look at what happened last season. You know, last season we bought to try to compete immediately. You know, we spent a lot of money on Lisandro Martinez. We spent a lot of money on Casemiro. We spent a lot of money on Antony. You don't do that. We bought Eric, you know, we signed Eriksson. Yeah, he was free. But we spent a lot of money on a lot of players the summer before to try to cheat the rebuild and see if we could just get it done. And it was awful. It was awful. We kind of collapsed right away and then figured it out. But you can see that it wasn't sustainable and we weren't ready to move forward. You also have that by the time we're competing, you're going to need to be replacing players like Bruno. You're going to need to be, it's still awful. You're going to need to be replacing, you know, Varane. You're going to need to be replacing Casemiro. You got to replace so many players. It is how teams operate. You look at the opposite end of Manchester City, but not the years that led up to them becoming good. Liverpool bought players that I guarantee Twitter and everybody would have said were nobodies at the time, you know, who they built their team with. You know, nobody expected Jordan Henderson to become the focal point of one of the most successful sides in England. Trent Alexander-Arnold, you know, their fullbacks, obviously, Robertson. These were not all a bunch of hype names that they brought in that became important players. These were, you know, from the Championship. You do build teams this way. You know, Arsenal have still kind of struggling, but look at what they bought. Nobody knew Saliba would turn into what he did, but he was a good young player. The way that they've purchased and the way that they've built Saka, Martinelli, you know, it is what it is. You build from the ground up, and then you finish it off with the bigger signings. You know, we're not in a position. Yeah, Trent from the academy, Robertson from the Championship. You know, that's the way to do it. You know, Madrid, you can say Madrid is the model. Have you seen how many young players Madrid buy from South America that you've never heard of before? They buy tons and tons. They have an entire B side of young players that come into their team after developing for years before they're stars. And I think that a lot of fans don't have the patience for that. You know, the Galacticos come on top of that. And obviously you can do that once you've built up the foundation. But we can't compete with these teams. We can't compete with Real Madrid for signings. We're not getting the Mbappes and the Haalands and all of that. You know, people have to understand. People have to understand what the reality is at United. And, you know, they hope that a new player comes in, you know, is going to suddenly take everything to the next level, a new, you know, and that we're just going to be able to buy instant success. Well, you can't. It's a process. And by doing the process right, that's how you get, you know, results. Yeah, I mean, outside of Haaland and Grealish, it's not even like City had made that massive of signings. And I don't even know that they've been the best ones, you know, in terms of the players that they've brought in, you know. It is what it is. I think that patience is really necessary. Let me move on to left backs because I'm getting distracted. Because here's where I would say we do have some definite. I'm moving Ait-Nouri up here. Ait-Nouri. Move Balde down. Gutierrez, we could put him in the middle. Yeah, I think Ait-Nouri is a player that United are definitely looking at. Yeah. And I think that is one to definitely keep an eye on. I think that's one we should definitely watch for the future. And one that you know, that they've been looking at. I think they looked at him some time ago, and I think that don't worry about. By the way, don't worry about the order that they're in within the yellow. In most instances, it's not that important. Anthony Robinson, I think, is a name worth adding to. Yeah, I think you're correct. Anthony Robinson is a name worth adding here. Robinson is a name worth adding here into the yellow as well. Someone that has been looked at that could become an option. It's a good player. So, yeah. I understand, again, might be about how teams want to play. When you kind of look at how we're setting up, it depends. It depends how we're going to set up the back line. I don't know how that yellow is showing up on the stream, but anyway, it depends how we're setting up at the back line. I think Kirk is at Bournemouth. Kirky's at Bournemouth. Obviously, he had a really good game against us, didn't he? He'd be one I would keep an eye on as well. He would be one I'll add his name. I haven't heard much about him, but I do know that they've watched him, and that's about all I know. So I'll put him in here. He is one to keep an eye on. But again, when I look at it, a theme that I'm getting is a lot of young, a lot of physical players, a lot of Premier League experience too. And I think that, again, going back to this kind of point of topic, this is where I would say it's important to keep an eye on things. It's important to understand exactly what we're trying to accomplish here. We're not that close. We're not that close. I don't think Livramento and Lamptey are options this summer. We're not that close. There's a lot that has to be done to get United up to the level of winning consistently, and it has to be done right. It has to be done right. It does have to be done right. We've got to do things in a proper process. And if you start to bring in young players who are successful, I mean, look at our front line, for example. Right now we have Rashford, who's underperforming. Højlund, who needs still quite a bit of development. Garnacho, who still needs quite a bit of development, but is definitely coming along. And we have Anthony, who's also completely underperforming and has no history of success in the Premier League, so may not be anything for the future. That's not a front three. This front setup is not one that you could say, yeah, for sure, we're there. We're ready to just throw in a big player and we're set up. There's no guarantees of any of this working that in that front line. We need more options. We need more players like Olise who are comfortable doing different things. Rashford, Højlund, Garnacho, they're all still score first players who just want to get in and go on the ball. Olise is a creative player, basically, to me, in a lot of ways, a much better Antony in terms of a profile. He's a much better Antony who can, create, who's going to be more pass first, who's going to be able to do the things that we would have hoped Antony could do, but someone who's up to that physical level. So this is the type of thing that's important. We have to focus on building for the future because it could take some time. And it's the same at center back. I mean, look, we tried to bring in Varane. That hasn't fixed anything. Our defense has been worse. Midfield, we tried to bring in Casemiro. Look what happened. We've tried the big names for so long. The Zlatans and, everything. Pogba, we've done the big names. It doesn't work that way. That's not to say you don't buy big players. You don't buy top players. You don't buy top performers. But you buy them when you're ready for them. And we need to build a proper situation, a proper culture, a proper setup that is really consistent in terms of style, in terms of play, and fit the right players in and get good players, technical and physical level. Now, because United have money and because we could potentially spend a lot of money, we can speed up the process. It doesn't have to take 4 or 5 years. It can take a couple of years, but we're not going to be in Champions League next season. So this is the season, this is the summer to me to make these signings, that the players who aren't ready yet, and really put in a proper style, a proper structure, a proper system, and say, this is where we're going. Let's build it out. Let's focus on the way that we play. Let's focus on really building up, something here, and get it right. And then, after that, we can then focus on, getting in the finished products after that. Let's say once we've got, these players developing, we know exactly what we want, then we get a player who matches it exactly to take things to the next level in an area that is potentially weak. But there's a lot of players who might be, moving on in the next years and that haven't been altogether that reliable. Like at center back, a huge number of there. Lindelof, Maguire, Varane, they're all the wrong side of 30. And Lisandro Martinez has injuries. That's why center back is such a big focus. But we need ones for the next 5, 8, 10 years, in these positions. We need that. Because we don't need to be buying 2 center backs a season every season. It's crazy. I mean, look at how many minutes Johnny Evans has had to play. And yeah, Shaw, unreliable. Injury-wise, it's been rough. Malacia's missed a full season. There's so much that has to be done. We are not ready of just buying one player, big player in a position and saying, that's it. We're just not ready. Yeah, in terms of departures, a lot will leave. So let me answer some questions now. Let me get to questions because I have about 8 more minutes and then I have to end the stream because I've got to get on to work. But let me answer some questions here to end this off. I hope it's been interesting. I know not a huge amount has changed. We've added some names. I think I've culled some. I haven't really deleted them, but I've moved some more to red. Yeah, I mean, we need to flip practically the whole team. Mastantuono. Yeah, I think he's an option, but I'm just not sure about us moving on a lot of these young players yet. I know that most of the questions you want to ask me are about Ten Hag, and we're just going to have to wait on that. I feel I know what's going to happen. I feel I know what's been decided, but there's still things that are up in the air. The thing I will say that's sort of kind of bizarre to me is you had, and I don't think this is the case, I never have. You've had a lot of people saying, well, it's going to depend on how the season ends, depend on our league form, depend on all of that, depend on these things, and it's all about, results dictating the decision. I'm not sure it is. I've never thought that would be the case. I've thought if he stays or goes, it's something that's going to be decided on a totally different measure, and here's some evidence for that. We've been awful. Champions League's gone now. So if you were saying that it was results-based, shouldn't you now be saying that the decision's made? Shouldn't you now be saying that? Shouldn't you know the outcome? If it was results-based, wouldn't you know the outcome? The results have been bad. We failed. The end of the season has been a failure results-wise. We're out of the race, essentially, for Champions League now. So what are you going to say, If it was results-based, then the answer is answered. I don't think it is, though. I think it has to do with a lot of other stuff. Yeah, FA Cup Gober. I don't know that that's enough, but I don't really think it's ever really been results-based, frankly. One way, good for Ten Hag, bad for Ten Hag. I don't think that they've looked at it on a results basis because it doesn't change things that much. Esteval, yeah, I know Phil talked about him. I don't have much on him myself, but he could be an option. Thank you, Angie. Anything on Ashworth? And do you feel any changes with the youth team's coaches? Great stream, by the way, man. Thank you. On Ashworth, obviously, they're still talking about it. They're still interested. They're still pushing on it. I haven't really heard any progress on that. Wilcox is looking good, and I do expect he'll start around the time I last tweeted, and it should be coming soon, and that's going to be really vital. But in terms of yeah, thank you for those donations, by the way. In terms of Ashworth, no progress yet. I'm not feeling as optimistic as I was, even though they're pushing. I think it's been really difficult with Newcastle, unfortunately. Real question, what's the secret to your glowing skin? Probably the lighting in here. Yeah, my skin is not that great. It's not that bad, though. It's not that bad. I do not suffer from dry skin, and I've always had, sweaty hands and things, and so I do not actually have dry skin, so that's nice. Thank you for the updates. Thank you for the donations and all of that. Let me see. Wilcox, yeah, he should be coming in soon. Predictions for what place Sir Jim finishes. How many racers are in that? I mean, it's quite impressive. It is quite impressive. It's quite impressive at his age, still doing all of that. Let's see. Surprise player to be sold we don't expect. I don't think so. I mean, unless a big offer came in for Bruno and he wanted to go, but otherwise I don't think so. I don't think any major surprises. I don't think Ashworth will be in before summer now. No, I really don't. Heading recruitment will be most likely Omar Barada and Wilcox, yeah. I mean, they could always pay for Ashworth. They could just pay up, but I haven't heard any changes recently. since the last thing, since that meeting that was reported face to face. I think maybe 4 or 5 signings this summer. 2 center backs, a forward, a midfielder or 2, and then maybe a left back. I think that's probably more likely. I don't know that we can get all the business done in terms of a striker also. It might end up being a striker or a winger. It might end up being 1 center back and a left back. I don't know. Depends on the sales. Yeah. If I had to bet my house on it, our manager next season, I'm not going to answer. People will read too much into when I give my opinions on things. People will just read into it too much. It's a little too dangerous for me to do that, I'm sorry to say. Current youth players to supplement the squad next season and use as backup players. Maybe Amas. I think they want to look at Amas this summer for left back before making a signing. And that's why that one maybe they don't. I think they want to look at him, Harry Amas. Yeah. If we were to make a change, Potter or De Zerbi, I don't know. I don't know. Potter. If we were to make a change, who would be more likely? I would say Potter, but I don't know. Just an opinion. That is just an opinion. I have not heard any change on the Sancho side of things in terms of whether he wants to stay or go. My understanding of it has always been that he's more likely to leave. Either way, regardless of the manager. That he is more likely to leave. Regardless of manager, that there's other situations. There's other situations, and that's what I would say. There's other things that have gone on, other things he's been unhappy with, and the relationship is difficult. I think it's still more likely that he will leave either way than stay, regardless of who comes in. Now, could Omar come in and have talks with him? Could Wilcock come in and have talks with him and change that? Maybe. And the manager change, but there's a lot of things that would have to change and go right. Jack Webb, do Ineos have to announce 10x future soon? I think they do, yes. I do think they do. I think that they need to clarify it really shortly. I think, let's put it this way. Let's say we lost on Sunday against Coventry. I think we will know what happens then next week. Yeah, is what it is. I think they have to clarify it sooner than that, sooner than the end of the season, but time's running out. I think that ideally, if they can get Wilcox started around beginning of the month, like we'd heard about, then that would be a good time for it, though. I think that would be a good time for it. I got a couple more minutes, and then I got to head out. Any final questions? I've answered a lot of things. Xerxes, there's nothing in Xerxes from my side of it. I don't think it's likely because he doesn't want to come to be a rotation player, same as last time. Maybe it's because we're still in the FA Cup, yeah, but I think it does need more clarity. I just think it does. I think it should be really stated. Yeah. I don't think Wirtz will be the Bruno replacement. I don't think that's likely right now. All right, I'm gonna have to end it here. My number 1 and 2 preferred signings. Cool. Let me give my opinion on it. I'm not saying these are the most important players, but number 1 is Olise because I think he's a player of a profile and forwards that we severely lack, and we will never become top, when it comes to forwards until we add some creativity into the mix and a player of his caliber. I was hoping Sancho would be that guy, but Olise would be good. And then I would really love to see Amadou Onana come in, even though I don't think that's likely. I would love to see Amadou Onana come in, even though I don't think it's very likely right now. I think those are 2 players that I would just really like to see in terms of adding something we don't have with Onana, the physical and technical traits he brings in the midfield, and with Olise, something we severely lack up front. Okay? All right. That's not what I said. I didn't say Ten Hag will leave if he loses the Coventry. I said maybe they'll clarify if we're out of the FA Cup on his future, on the decision that I feel they've already made. I didn't say that it'll be about that, about leaving or winning, losing or winning that game. That's not what I said. All right, that's it, guys. Thank you for watching today. Thank you very much. I'll definitely do more of these regularly, maybe on other topics too. I don't always have to do it on these big, long-term streams. But thank you very much for watching. I hope you all enjoyed. Yeah, appreciate it very much. I appreciate it very much. And we'll definitely, I'm definitely working on some updates on some major topics that hopefully I can bring to you very, very soon. Okay? Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see everybody later.